Bang ding ding, trademark. He come out 6'7" tall. Bang ding ding, one is star. Bang dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding. This is a perfect day.
Woke up to the sound of the garbage truck again. Upstairs neighbor's toilet's leaking on my head. And cars broke down, I missed the bus that runs at 10. I had a feeling this was a day to stay in bed. I finally left my pad right under Jumbo's cloud roof. A police officer pulled out his gun and said, I said, sir, you got the wrong guy. I guess it's just a perfect day. It's just a perfect day. Na, 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 na.
Hey there, and welcome back to Eggs. This week, we have side hustle coach and host of the Perspective podcast, Scotty Russell. Scotty has a long career in the creative industry, moving from years as a graphic designer and artist to most recently pivoting full-time to coaching creative people on how to grow their side hustles and beyond. He is a regular guest speaker and attendee at popular creative conferences, including Creative South, Crop Conference, Creative Works, and so on, and produces his weekly podcast with the aim of sharing his own and other creative people's stories in hopes that others might grow from them. Here to talk about finding your passion and being able to do it for a living, learning how to grow your own creative side hustle the right way, how creative people can get out of their own way to live the lives they want, and so much more. Please join us in welcoming to the show, Scotty Russell. Hey, Scotty, how are you, man?
I'm doing good. That's always like a trip to hear an outside perspective on what I'm attempting to build over here. So that was pretty cool. I'm not used to hearing it like beforehand and afterwards. So yeah, that was pretty dope.
Well, it's
Gotta be
funny.
hyped now.
The more we talk to podcasters and stuff, because we have sort of this way of doing it where we play the intro ahead of time. And it's kind of nice in that it, I guess, kind of frames a conversation, right? The downside is it could sort of put rails on a conversation, which we don't actually mean to do. But as a matter of efficiency, it's nice to be able to sort of just record it.
I've never had anybody like prep the intro before, and I'm like, okay, yeah, this is insane. It's got me hyped right now, but no,
Well,
nothing.
And in the olden days, I used to just re-record it live, or either I or Mike, whoever was doing the intro that week would just do it live. And, but I'm always tripping over my tongue or, saying something stupid or whatever. And so I've resorted to recording it now and playing it back. And that's been a lifesaver.
I dig it. And there's nothing off the topic. So if you want to derail and go any which way, just like pepper me, man. I'll be an open book.
Excellent. Well, yeah, no, that'll be great. Well, I mean, I guess, first of all, maybe we should break the ice a little bit. It's been actually a lot of fun following your career over all these years in sort of a weird cyber stalkery kind of way. You and I sort of roll in a lot of similar circles. We have a lot of similar friends, from FDOT to Christo to Jason Frostholm and all the guys at Creative South and, so on. We sort of roll in these circles, but I don't think we've ever actually had the opportunity to cross paths. So, I've been sort of following your career via Instagram and things like that over the years. And so it's been a lot of fun to watch this transformation. But maybe we can talk a little bit here at the top of the show, just about sort of who you are, where you come from, and what your background is, and how we got here today.
That quick little brief elevator pitch, the Wikipedia page summary. Scotty Russell, create, teach, coach, speak under the platform Perspective Collective. I was a closet artist for like 20 something years, terrified to share my work. But once I started sharing my work and having the courage to show up online, that is kind of what changed the game for me. Like Instagram, everything else, allowed me to see like, hey, here is some value that I provide. The only artists out there that are successful aren't just Bob Ross. Cause I grew up no cable, IPTV, that was my hero, but I'm like, no, I gotta be a graphic designer. There's no money into this. Went to college, played football, graduated thinking I was really good at art and design, was horrible. I got punched in the mouth and couldn't get a job for 3 years. So was constantly behind the scenes, drawing logos, drawing tattoos, created own little brand t-shirt clothing line with a buddy for 4 years. Nothing ever seemed to like click. I got very depressed, hit rock bottom after graduating college, just couldn't get a job anywhere. Honestly, got suicidal, got so wrapped up in comparison, and I stuck with it. At the end of the day, I kept fighting for something I enjoyed. I almost quit it all. And finally something happened. I ended up getting a job 3 years with my design career doing car ads, just grunt work. But that was like the little glimmering moment of like, okay, hey, I got potential here. I can't just wait for things to happen. I need to go and like take initiative. So I became really obsessed with getting really good at the design work during the day job, like blowing away all the previous car ad stuff that he had. Like I took pride in my work, became obsessed, built a killer portfolio there, and then became obsessed with drawing again. After a wild festival experience, I came home just on fire, started drawing like a madman, leveraging social media. Perspective Collective was born in 2014. The same time, my t-shirt company kind of tanked, but it all led me to this. And I got a big boy job at corporate. So I did the corporate cubicle for 5.5 years, building Perspectives Collective from hobby to side hustle, figuring out how to monetize it. Went from drawing every day to blogging, to public speaking, to podcasting, to selling merch, to affiliates, sponsors. Then it all led to the path of coaching. I thought I wanted to be a big time freelancer, work with massive brands, because that's what I saw other people I looked up to doing. And it just wasn't the path for me. And I've just been slowly trying to blaze my own path over the years and sharing what's worked for me, helping other people figure out how to build something that is important to them outside of their day jobs, family, and life responsibilities. And 2019, I lost my safe corporate job, but that same year earlier, I started coaching and stopped my 2 breadwinners of online selling merch as well as freelancing. I turned those buckets off and I went all in on myself. And yeah, that kind of exploded that year. Lost my safe job after landing a new house that I'm in right now that doubled our mortgage after finding out kiddo number 2 was going to be born. And I threw myself into the fire, went full time in 2020, and got hit with the pandemic and my kiddo being born during a pandemic. And somehow I'm still here. And that first year of self-employment, I doubled what my previous day job salary was. So it's been a roller coaster ride. I would never act like I have it all figured out, but I've learned a lot along the way, and I try to like help other people bypass the hurdles that I've done. So that is skinny of an 11-year career outside of college.
As a outsider looking in on the careers of 2 graphic designers here, I just have to say that it's pretty scary how similar your guys' careers are, like parallel, down to the t-shirt design company and the ads for car dealerships. Ryan has had a very similar work history.
I think there's a takeaway in it right there. I thought nobody cared about my story. Like I never thought, why would anybody care what I have to say? But yeah, when I started sharing my story, that's what changed the game. That's what got me on Diane Gibbs's podcast in the beginning. She's the one who gave me my first speaking opportunity,
I love Diane.
Which I almost all said no to, which then all led to me getting to speak at Creative South when I was like not ready, was terrified. I almost crapped my pants. I got to open up for Draftland Day. I'm like, no one's going to be here. And it ended up being a packed house, So like, yeah, it's always sharing your story is your most powerful asset, and just like throw yourself into the fire. 2 takeaways right from the beginning.
Yeah. And I think it's great. Like Mike said, I mean, there's a million parallels between sort of your career and my career. And for me, I just turned 40. I too have 2 kids. A mortgage, all this kind of stuff. Right. And I've always gone more self-employment, but sort of like high-end freelance route, so I sort of went that way. And, but hearing your story, even assures people like me that it's okay to not know what the hell we're doing. You see a lot of stuff in social media and everything about imposter syndrome and stuff like this. But I think that there shouldn't even really be an imposter syndrome. Rather, the idea is that, to pretend that what's going on is actually the problem. Because I think that, your story illustrates it. Mine is very, very similar. I think, I just listened to a recent episode you did with our mutual friend F. Dot, and, his story was sort of the same. Basically, if you try and have a plan, that's the first wrong step. Like really just sort of, doing the work and moving forward and working hard is going to end up reaping some kind of benefit. And really the character you build and the success you find is all going to be built on the backs of the crazy stuff that you did along the way.
Facts.
Yes.
Episode done. Boom,
Yeah, right.
value.
I feel like we delivered the value. Moving on.
Where can we find your work? And tell us.
Right. You got
Yeah.
your outro all pre-recorded too?
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, no, and so, but I think you're so right. And I think that actually that is where the value comes from, right? And I suppose that probably feeds into your coaching a little bit too, is this idea that you have this story and you have this background, and especially for creative people, they can empathize, or you can empathize with them. In most of them, especially if you're working with a lot of younger creatives, they do feel really meandery. It's hard to find a career where you can actually get paid for your art. And and so I think hearing stories like yours, obviously help people out. And so I think it's a great thing that you're out doing that.
I feel like it's more relatable. I didn't come from money. I don't have a fancy art school degree. I went to a D3 college, to play D3 football. Went to school like loving Microsoft Paint, like growing up drawing logos in Microsoft Paint from like sports teams because I was a card collector, to like stumbling into, holy crap, Adobe Illustrator. What is this? Like that kind of thing. Just, yeah, everything I've just stumbled into, and connecting the dots. It's just like, okay, yeah, all of this makes sense, but it didn't make sense in the moment. It's like having blind faith in yourself, in a sense, betting on yourself.
Yeah, it's failing upward is what I've always called it. And but I think that that's true. So let's talk a little bit then, I guess, about that career pivot. So I mean, as you described, I mean, you spent a lot of years as a designer, and I know for me personally, I've struggled with this idea of who I am or what I'm known for versus who I want to be or what I want to do. And I know, especially maybe it just has to do with age or having a couple kids in the house, or I don't know what it is, but it seems like there's some sort of trigger that gets flipped where maybe you want to start doing something different, but you're so entrenched in what you've always been doing that it's difficult to make this pivot. So I'm fascinated with this idea. I wonder if you talk us or sort of take us through the process of you making the change from just full-time design guy to full-time coach.
Let's see. In the beginning, I think it was just I think it started when I lost my identity as an athlete, when 2 big injuries to my back in college, like there went my dream of being a successful college wide receiver, and the depression that came with that. Like, who am I now? Who am I? Like, yeah, I'm kind of an artist, but I like to party. I was a wild person. I still got good grades. School came easy, but for some reason I didn't invest in my art. I always thought like I'd figure it out. I would know a relationship, something happened. So like those 3 years of rock bottom post college, like that was such a good learning lesson for me, and having to like reinvent myself. So I had to reinvent myself once from here's all I knew was football. What am I going to do now? But I became a student coach, and looking back on it, connecting the dots, like, wow. So I was always a coach then, reluctantly, but blending the worlds of coaching with my love for art. Once I started finding my artistic groove again, I'm just like, okay, so now I feel like I have to be this identity of a freelancer or designer, when still behind the scenes there was this coaching side that I didn't know was there. So just owning it, of trusting my gut in a sense, like, man, this just doesn't feel right. I feel like I'm climbing up the wrong ladder of chasing this freelance game. I was good at it. I feel like I could be great. I feel like I could have done it full time. I feel like I had the drive and the motivation and the community around me that I could lean on to be really good at it. But it always felt off and never felt fulfilling. What felt more fulfilling was like getting a DM, like, holy crap, dude, what you said on your podcast episode, like, meant way more to me. Or people hitting me up like, hey, you think I could like pick your mind for a little bit on a one-on-one? Can we jump on a Skype call? Like, I kept getting more and more and more of those, and I was just filling up my schedules with calls. I didn't know I was doing coaching at the time. So eventually got to the point where I'm like, hey, people are hitting me up enough. I got a kid along the way. Something needs to change. I can't say yes to all these things. I've always wanted to be a coach, but I was a fraud. Like, even at Creative South, when I gave my first talk in 2016, I had up on a slide behind me, creative coach on one of the sides as like my overview slide. And I had such bad imposter syndrome that when someone took a photo of me up there, I edited it out and put like custom illustration and lettering. Cause I'm like, who am I to call myself a coach? And so this is something I'd just been like an identity crisis that I was dealing with for years. And then finally, I think it stems from like being bullied and being a people pleaser my entire life, wanting people to like me and accept me, hence why I'm so big on community. I finally just got tired of like, you know what, screw it. I'm just gonna go all in and go with my gut. This is what I'm very passionate about. Even though I know people are gonna judge me, or who is he to be a 30-year-old coach, but the demand, I guess, was there. And this is something I just been subconsciously doing and just didn't know it was coaching. So I don't know if that answers it, but I don't know. Once I finally submitted myself to what I calling was, things just really started to click, and it got easier to say no to freelance. And honestly, the more value and impact I created, the more my bank account grew, versus like me chasing the money and wanting the features and the accolades of like, oh yeah, hey, let me put my select client as Apple on my site kind of thing. Like when I stopped chasing that, a whole different world started opening up.
Well, and I think that's right. I mean, I think, you hear stories like this all the time, right? People where they find sort of, not to get too Simon Sinek-y, but, they find their why. They start to understand what it is.
Game changer for me.
Yeah, right. I mean, they're trying to understand what it is they're doing and why they're doing it. And once that becomes clear, then you're comfortable stopping chasing that dollar. And it's almost as if just by, I don't know, magic, it just starts working out. Like the money starts coming in, you find an audience, all these different things. So So even though your story, I would say, is probably non-traditional in the sense that you didn't go to school to become a coach, you didn't go through a leadership program and blah, blah, blah. I think your story is probably more in line with most successful coaches. Was, you went out, you did the work, you learned what it was. And then by doing all that work, you uncovered your purpose. And by, being able to identify your purpose, now you can act accordingly.
It helped me find the demand. What I'm really big with my students is like, so many people are climbing up the wrong ladders, chasing the external results before they're even ready for it, when they haven't even done the internal work yet, which leads to the external results. It's like they're trying to ride a Harley before they even rode a Strider bike like those kiddos ride these days, or training wheels. I'm like, dude, you need to like do the hard inner work to even figure out what the external results could be, versus chasing these external results. It's just too much pressure. If you're like, oh, I have to monetize my passion right away. I'm like, no, you don't. Leverage a day job. Like, it has been a slow and steady grind for me. It's not an overnight. Like I talk about, this isn't a microwavable result. Your creative career path isn't a $1 value Salisbury steak frozen dinner. That's not what we're doing here.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. You mentioned like Apple being your star client. I mean, the idea of building this beautiful logo quilt of clients that you've probably very lightly touched, yet you claim credit for having worked on them. Like, I mean, that for me anyway is sort of like the social equivalent of likes or hearts or thumbs ups or
Vanity
whatever, right? I mean, ultimately it doesn't really serve you. I mean, Apple is not tricked by you when they hit you up and then say, you try and pitch a job for, no money or something, like, I mean, they can snip you out, or, they can see your work and stuff like that. I mean, you're not going to convince some other big company to come do work with you just because you threw a bunch of logos on your page.
I liked your story about the forced pivot, injury from football, you can't continue with your career path, and now you have to change. I think a lot of people go through life and there's forced pivots that happen to everyone. For me, it was I was driving a truck and I got into a minor fender bender, and because of that, I lost my job. And then I ended up having to go and start DJing full time because it was the only source of income I knew at the time, and it turned into a good thing for me. I think that a lot of people right now are going through that with COVID, and so I honestly think that sometimes forced pivots aren't necessarily the worst thing in the world. Your example's perfect. You started coaching for football, and then it's actually turned into a successful art career, and then into a successful coaching career. So don't really look at it as the worst thing in the world if you have to pivot.
Big thing, like, I'm not going to claim this. I think it was NQ I heard this from, is it's not what happens to you. It's like, hey, this actually happened for you. I'm a glass half full kind of guy, but I'm not like toxic positivity dude. I've been through some crazy stuff and I own it, and it's just a part of my story now. But yeah, all of the hard, crappy moments the low points have like set me up for someone else. It's like a setback is just a setup for a comeback. I'm like, okay, yep, I'm gonna operate from that mindset because I played victim for the first 20-ish, 3-ish years of my life. I'm like, yeah, that's not a fun person to be. So it's like you can reinvent yourself anytime, let go of past limiting beliefs.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and maybe that's something we could talk about a little bit more, are those limiting beliefs and sort of how to break through there. I think especially for a lot of young creative people, breaking through those things can be really challenging. And I think that this is sort of part and parcel with the, imposter syndrome sort of stuff that we were talking about. But I mean, do you have any advice or any things? I mean, I know Christo is a big advocate for therapy and some other things like this to try and resolve these kinds of things. But I wondered if you had any techniques or things that have worked for you in order to sort of smash these things outside of just, simple desperation. I got hurt as a football player and I was able to now go this route.
Man, I've never went through therapy. I think that's great. I actually feel like I would benefit greatly from it. But for me, what changed the game for me is vulnerability. I guess just I come from the sports world, the man life of rub some dirt on it, don't show weakness, kind of things like that. So that was the mentality I had, and I just lived this filtered life. But once I started opening up and just working through things through my work, my work in the beginning was for me, like the lost version of myself who was depressed, had mad anxiety. When I started like writing about my anxiety, because I felt like I was a crazy psycho when I was having panic attacks and had to go to the hospital from them. But then I just like put out a piece about dealing with anxiety as a creative. And that was like the first thing I've ever worked through something publicly. And the amount of feedback I got from that, like that blew up, when before I would have never shared anything like that. Like to me, that was therapeutic. What I share is like the ugly that leads to the highlight reel. And I think that's what people relate to is it's hard to relate to someone who has it all figured out.
Yeah, no, it's true. There really is something to that transparency and being so open with sort of emotional things. I think also it endears people too, as they start to recognize not only are you suffering through this, but hey, we're suffering through this together. Me as a reader, I'm reading what you've written and I can relate. I too have an article that's sort of like that. It spurred a whole separate company and another podcast and everything, but it was based on this idea of being a team made apart. And the idea was that, as a freelance, I work for all these amazing clients and all these amazing companies, but we're always still kind of at arm's length. We're still just the guy working quietly alone in our own place. And so I think that, much like what you did, I've tried to air, I guess, my laundry a little bit in public that way. And, I too have found that it served me well in terms of just sort of allowing people to sort of recognize your vulnerability and sort of endear themselves to you.
Well, and I'm big on like people, yeah, they want to like grow a great freelance career or something like that. But I really want to work with people who are, want to grow like engaged communities that care about them and their work, and I think a big thing is a personal brand. I know that's a gross word to a lot of people, but like every one of us is a personal brand with how we show up daily, whether you're at Walmart giving your recommendation on a cereal in the aisle talking to someone, or at the meat counter someplace and like, oh, I really recommend these ribs. Like you're a personal brand selling your ideas to someone. And I think at the end of the day, like I want to just help people show up and truly create work that they really vibe to, that they're good at, that can make an impact on people they truly care about. To me, like that is my definition of success. And how can you do that long term? And I think just being yourself, being the same person that you are online, that you are offline. If you were to have a conversation to me right now, this is exactly who I'm going to be in person. I think it's weird having two identities. Like here's my online persona and here's my in person. Like, dude, that's anxiety, trying to live two lives. That's, I don't know. I did that life. I lived a filtered version. So it's not for me.
Yeah, it's true. The idea, I think, of personal brand for a lot of people feels like very Gary V or something, this idea that you have to develop this personal brand. But I think you're right. Being authentic and just sort of being who you are really is, all
people
folks
connect to you way easier. Like you want to build a engaged community around what you're doing and get people to like you, your work. You want to build like, know, and trust with someone. Like be relatable, share yourself, show your face, get on video more. open up. Don't just share the wins. Just teach people, educate them, inspire them, entertain them, and just continue to show your weird little quirks in what you do. You know, that's what helped me connect with people.
Yeah. Speaking about engaged communities and building a network, podcasting to me seems to be a good way to do that. And you actually have started a podcast of your own. And I was wondering maybe if you could tell us a little bit about how your podcast is going and how it's changed your life. I know for Eggs, I never would have been able to interview people like you or meet people like you and have these kind of conversations. So for me, it's a continual learning experience that I just love. But I was wondering, maybe just kind of break down your podcast and how it's changed things for you.
Yeah, for sure. After that Creative South talk, like people were like, "Hey, you should start a podcast." And I was like, "Okay, that could be cool." And then honestly, I was just too scared to do it for months. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, all of that stuff. But finally, I'm like, okay, here's a day. I'm just going to do it, roll with it. I didn't know the whole marketing stuff that I know now. There's a million things I would have done differently. Like it would not be called Perspective Podcast. I'll tell you that much. That's why I have a tagline with it, because it's fuel for your mind and creative grind. So it's like, that's got to live with the title everywhere. So it's a long title. But how it's changed for me, man, that was just a huge personal project. And now it's become like the marketing vessel to what I do, which is wild. It's given me an excuse to talk. I'm a talker. I always felt like I had more to say than just a pretty polished picture on Instagram. Hence why I started blogging, which led to the next form, because my writing's probably not the best, but I feel like I'm more myself. A superpower, I guess, is I'm just better on audio or video or something like that. I feel like I can just be myself more. So it's really allowed me to find my voice, find my style, giving me an excuse to strike up conversations with people I really look up to, or people that I feel like are going to blow up, that maybe I could use my platform to help spotlight them, like other people have given me opportunities. And it's given me a place to like really build a community and understand who I'm serving and how I can uniquely provide value to them through my experiences. So it's been a game changer. I don't have the biggest podcast. I'm not a famous top 3 iTunes person at all. And what I'm proud of though is like, it's very engaged listenership. Like it's engaged. It is a community. It's a family. And like when I have guests on, man, they just go and show that guest so much love. So it's truly like an engaged core. You don't need a massive following to make big moves with your creative pursuits. And I feel like I'm trying to embody that.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Well, and it's funny too that this show, Eggs, was actually born kind of tangentially from Creative South also. I was a guest on Jason Frostholm's old podcast, the Creative South podcast, when he was doing that.
Eggs was hatched from Creative South.
Yeah, and that was the first time I'd been on a podcast, and he had sort of, encouraged me to do the same thing. Hey, you ought to go check out podcasting. What do you think about this thing? And he came to my hotel at like midnight the night before I was leaving town and everything. And
Jason's a good dude.
Yeah, and we did that, I guess, at a Weapons of Mass Creation Fest up in Cleveland.
Which one were you at?
I was at the one that Sagmeister spoke at. It must have been
okay.
2018, 2017.
Yeah, okay.
Something like that. And so, but anyway, Jason came up to the hotel. He was interviewing a lot of the guys that I had met at that conference, and they were like, "Oh, you should talk to Ryan." So he showed up at the hotel the night before I left and was like, that was my first, I guess, brush with podcasting. I had been listening prior to then, but that was the first time I'd been interviewed by somebody. And I came home, and later that summer, me and Mike sort of kicked this thing off.
Yeah, it's been a hell of a ride, hasn't it? I really like where we've gone with Eggs and the people we've interviewed and the conversations that we've had. But anyways, before I forget, I wanted to mention this. Out of all the podcast artwork that I have ever seen, I'm giving yours number 1 by far. Best out there.
Are you just saying that to butter me up here, man?
No, man. I mean, like, you've got Abe Lincoln riding a dinosaur with a pizza flag in a spacesuit on the moon. I mean, how do you beat that? You can't beat that.
Shout out to my buddy Amir Grocase from the Forefathers, incredible illustrator. Like I told him I wanted to get weird. Pizza is just part of my life, and he just took it to the next level.
Yeah, it's incredible. If you haven't seen his podcast artwork, I highly suggest you check it out. It's really top notch.
So I wanted to talk to you. We sort of talked about one side of imposter syndrome, but I wonder if you're seeing this in your coaching students as well. The other side of that, in that people are sort of chasing somebody else's dream. So there's a lot of people who I think largely feel like imposters because they're chasing down something they saw on Instagram, or they're trying to live a life that belongs to somebody else. And I wonder if people come to your coaching program, with the intention of, hey, I'd like to build up, XYZ program. This is what I want to do. And then if through your process, you sort of uncover the reality, which is that isn't what you want to do. You saw that somewhere, you thought it was cool. You wanted to do that because of that. Reality is you should be doing this. Like, this is actually what you love. Have you come across that? And have you helped people sort of navigate those waters?
I would say that's probably like every discovery call. It usually pinpoints on that. I'm like, okay, what's the deeper why behind what you're wanting to do, or digging deep. Like I really like to press like hardcore. If you're like interested in coaching with me, we go on a deep discovery call and I'm going to grind you. I promise. I give a bold promise. Like, dude, I'm going to give you a life-changing conversation. At the end of it, no pressure. You may not even need coaching after this. You may not even need a program or a one-on-one or anything like that. So I would say every student I get on a call with, I dig deep on a question like that for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. I think honestly, especially for a lot of young people, I think it's, sort of that double-edged sword of social media and all this other stuff is, we're exposed to so many things and so many things that are really cool. Right. And it does feel like we want to do that, or we want to chase this particular, bright, shiny object. But I think, not unlike you did, with your coaching career, you sort of had discovered or sort of revealed this thing that was true once you sort of identified your purpose. So it seems like for especially young creatives who are busy chasing Instagram likes or whatever, that could be a real problem for them.
I think the biggest thing, what I like to challenge people is like, okay, what's the goal behind the goal? Man, I want an audience. I just want to like have a large following. But why? What's that going to get you? It'll make me feel like I have value to what I'm doing. Okay, but like, why do you need value? What makes you feel validated? What's this for? And then we just keep digging. And then I'm just like, okay, I just reveal by them answering their own questions. Like, honestly, are you climbing the right ladder right now? And most of them are like, actually, I don't really like freelance. I thought that was the only path because that's what so-and-so was doing. And I really look up to them. I look up to Draplin. So I felt like I had to do big time freelance names and do my own merch in order to be successful. It's like that they see this version of someone else's success and they feel like that's the path they need to take. I'm like, actually, you can just create your own path. Just find your own lane and then own it.
Yeah, I love that. I think lots of times people don't realize that they can find their own lane and create their own lane because they're too busy focusing on everyone else. And it's nice to kind of do your own thing for a change. Speaking of doing your own things, I recently pivoted to a different career. I'm doing landscaping now, kind of as a result of what happened with COVID. All my gigs kind of went away, and they're actually starting to come back gradually, slowly, which is nice. One thing I have noticed in both industries, the music world and the landscaping world, is it's very hard to figure out your value, what you should bill for a day's work manual labor, a day's work DJing, a day's work doing this or that. It's hard to figure out your worth. Can you maybe talk about your experience kind of defining your price and defining how to bill a client and all this stuff? There's a lot of new up and coming people who are starting businesses that this is kind of hard to figure out. So maybe as a business coach, you could enlighten us a little bit on that.
I guess I'm just going to solely speak from experience on this. Learning the hard way, I didn't know my worth in the beginning. And I think knowing your worth comes from being confident in what you're doing, investing in yourself, getting around other like-minded people, consuming in the right direction in terms of, like, say, Chris Doe's content on pricing, and then finding other people who talk about pricing, going and investing in like the Graphic Artist Guild book and learning about pricing. So I really think it's taking the time, if this is the route you want to go consume material in that world to at least have the basics, the fundamentals, versus like, okay, I'm just going to do pricing by hourly all the time. And then you're screwing yourself, and then you screw the industry over too, because you're like leaving a lot on the table, or you're competing for being the lowest bid in a place. So one, I would just say go and do research. So me in the beginning, I was just underpricing myself with $50 logo, $100 logo. Oh, that's too expensive. Well, let me go and let me just make it 50 because I really want the job. When I just didn't understand that was like devaluing my craft, making me a doormat for people who can then, get whatever they want out of me. And I just didn't put in the time of learning about it. So I would just definitely say go get educated. And understanding your value over time really comes from experimentation, fearlessly diving into things, throwing yourself into the fire. So for me, I didn't understand my value until I really found my thing, something I was good at, something I enjoyed. And then the demand came from it. Like, I severely undervalued myself in the first time I was going to do a coaching program. Like, I was just going to do a couple $100 for a 12-week program for 10 students, 3 months worth. I was going to charge like $300 or $400 per person. And thankfully I had a coach, and they were like, dude, you're insane. No way. You have way more value to provide. And they're like, you're going to start off by charging $3,000 per person. I'm like, whoa, that makes me uncomfortable. I'm just going to do 2,000. And I don't think anybody's going to sign up. I got 9 out of 10 people paid in full. Wow. I was like, wow, I didn't understand the value. And she was like, you're going to regret charging 2,000. And I regretted charging 2,000. So each time I've like raised my rates. I'm on my 5th time doing it this fall. And I think understanding your value over time comes from clarity, confidence, and conviction in what you're doing, finding some traction, willing to stick it out if you're not seeing results right away, to start seeing your value, knowing your worth. I think that's like a very important thing, is catching that pulse. Is this the right direction for me? So I was just charging, learning freelance world when really just wasn't a good fit. I could be great at it, but I had to like determine my value in a different world that I was unfamiliar with in terms of coaching. Yeah. I'm also a big component. There's like a marketing side to it of understanding the true, who are you serving in a sense? Who is that perfect person on the other end? Who's that perfect client? Who's your perfect follower? Who's your perfect listener? Who's your perfect student? What are their biggest struggles? What are their biggest needs? Is the work that you're providing, the service that you're providing them, helping them seek some type of transformation kind of thing? Or if it's a business, are they going to be profiting off your work? So like Maggie Anterios, she's going to be on again. I just recorded with her yesterday for another one, and we just go deep on pricing your illustration work in terms of creation fees, as well as licensing, usage rights, and everything like that. So like if anybody wants that, just keep a lookout. That's insane. She truly breaks it down. But I think you need to learn the hard way in everything to know what not to do. You need to get burned a couple times. You need to get screwed over a couple times. You need to undercharge yourself to feel the burn of like, wow, that sucked, and that's never going to happen again. Learning from your mistakes. Yeah. So I think that's important to like truly screw up.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point you make. And also, I wanted to just kind of point out a couple other things. I mean, as you were describing that, the first thing that was popping in my head was our conversation earlier about limiting beliefs, right? So much of our value, or as we see ourselves, is tied up by those limiting beliefs, right? We think our logo is only worth $50. We think our logo is only worth $100. And I always sort of point to examples. If you want to go to Pepsi and bid them on doing a logo, and you bid them $100, they'll laugh you out of the room. And it's not because they can't afford the $100. It's because the person who charges $100 isn't the level of professional they're looking
hobbyist.
And on conversely, I mean, if it's your first year out of college or something, and you go out and you want 15 grand for a logo, well, maybe that doesn't make sense either. Maybe your work's not quite there. Maybe the package that comes with your logo isn't sufficient for the money or whatever, So it's a little bit of a balancing act, I think.
There's levels.
Yeah. But to your point, I think that the time served and the energy put in and the, misbidding some projects and, going too high or going too low, and losing work and winning work. And I think that whole amalgamation of things, will sort of lead to a set of averages where you sort of understand your value in the marketplace. And, it's still probably 50% or more less than you're really worth or less than what you could get. But nonetheless, you at least have some bearings or, or some walls to understand, okay, well, I know that this is too low and that is too high and, whatever. So I think, I guess the short answer to the long answer is that, there is no shortcut. Part of it is figuring it out for you.
100%. It's like video games. There's levels to this. Each time you like grow and scale the slow and steady grind, you unlock the next level. It's like a video game. You got your mini bosses, your quests, your main bosses that you got to defeat to get to the next level. I mean, that's what our creative career is, but there's just no cheat codes, no shortcuts. Everybody wants a shortcut. All these short-sighted seeking souls seeking shortcuts. It's just doesn't work that way. Yeah, I think that's right. And I think, as you see, like on, if you spend a lot of time on social media or whatever, it's easy to get caught up in the, you see the people standing in front of their yacht or hanging out with the Lamborghini. You don't see the part. Ads.
Yeah. You don't see the part where they just walked up to some dude's Lamborghini and stood in front of it and took a picture,
Right.
They, you're not seeing the whole story. So we start to fabricate this idea in our heads that we can achieve that, or that we should, or that we're owed that maybe. And, and I think it's really important that people understand, no, there is a grind involved. And that just kind of is the way of the world. There is not a shortcut.
I feel like the biggest trait, the most powerful trait, one of the most powerful traits that someone could ever like breed within themselves is delayed gratification. I think that's like something I've gotten really good at. I think that's why I get to do my thing full time, is because I spent all those years in the trenches, waking up at 4:30 to grind before my 7 a.m. day job. It was like that feeling. The reason why I get to enjoy this monitor right now is because I spent all those years on a tiny little monitor with my computer. People lose sight of the power of earning something. I want the government to pay off my student loans. I'm like, bitch, you got yourself into this place. Like, it feels so much better. Sorry, I didn't know if I could swear or not. I didn't let go. I've been good about holding it back, but I'm like, at the end of the day, like, you got yourself into this. Yes, it's a weird system, but you got yourself, I got myself into student loan debt, private student loan debt in a mountain. I'm not here waiting for someone to save me. So like, I'm in control. Let me go and dig myself out. If you dig yourself a deep hole, get a bigger shovel. And I think that's the whole thing, is delayed gratification. If you truly want it, you can't complain that your 67% effort didn't yield 120% results. If you kind of want it, you're going to kind of see results. And I think people just talk a big game.
There's something to be said about getting yourself out of a deep hole, like whether it's, putting dirt in and filling it back in and getting a ladder, however you get out of the hole, there's something to be said about doing it. Because by doing it, those are the lessons you need to learn in life. I mean, you get in a bunch of credit card debt, and over 5-6 years, you're able to pay it off. It's learning not to get into debt to begin with. It's learning that, like, manage your finances better, do this better, do that better. Those are the lessons that you learn by getting into those deep holes. And when you get out of them, you not only feel great, but you've learned a bunch in the process, and you learn what not to do again. So yeah, it's definitely important.
Right.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, it's the whole reason we look up to people, like what you're doing, Scotty, or other people like you, the Aaron Draplins of the world, these kind of guys that, people aspire to be like. I mean, the reason those people are the person you aspire to be like is because they've all been through it, right? I mean, none of those guys, just came out of the womb, doing illustrations that were wildly popular and people wanted them. I mean, like, these people have all been through that. So secretly we admire the struggle, right? We look at all these people and we admire their struggle, but the problem is, through the lens of social media or whatever, we're only given that snapshot of where they are today. You don't see the 10-year overnight success. And so I think it's really important to sort of expose this stuff or have conversations about it.
100%. Yeah. It's hard to relate to someone who you think is perfect.
Well, so here in these last few minutes, Scotty, can we talk a little bit about your coaching program, what that looks like, how people can get involved? Like, so let's maybe, I'm young creative. I'm my first couple years out of school. I've found, I like graphic design. I'm working at my local newspaper. It's kind of not super fulfilling. I'm taking some side gigs that, little logo jobs. That feels more like what I want to pursue. I come across, your Instagram profile or a podcast you've done or something with an illustrator I know, like, and love. What do I do, or what is that process like in engaging with you in the first place? And then sort of what does it feel like once we're on board?
Let's see. So this was specifically created for people who are wanting to put themselves in a position to do their thing full time one day. And the fundamentals are mindset, marketing, and motivation in order to help you build something for yourself outside of your day job, family, life responsibilities. Like, the biggest struggles that I hear from people is like, oh, I just don't have enough time. I don't have enough resources, money, and motivation. I'm like, actually get on a call with me in 1 hour and I will expose all the areas. I will reveal all the areas of time that you do have in a day and reveal all the areas you're wasting. Like coming from, I was a dad, I was freelancing, podcasting, had a 9 to 5. I'm like, dude, like, I don't ever let someone use the excuse of time with me. So for me, it's always about, over the span of 12 weeks, 10 to 12 creative souls are going to go deep in a season of leveraging their day jobs to fuel your dream jobs, mastering the mindset around that, mastering the mindset of treating your side hustle like it's your full-time grind, making the switch from hobbyist to professional. We're going to learn how to hire yourself by creating intentional projects that attract the right type of client or fan, mastering the art of time management, overcoming the inner critic, and then finding and marketing their unique voice, message, style, and work, all within a 12-week atmosphere that it truly becomes family. Like community building is probably what I hang my hat on at the end of the day, taking 10 to 12 strangers all over the world. And like at the end, these are your ride or die. This is your support system. And at the end of that, you just get swallowed up by the alumni group. So the alumni continues to grow. Like, you always have a community. It just expands, so at the end of our 12 weeks together, we're not done. Like, I'm in the trenches all the time with my alumni group. That's who I go for all my feedback, testing out new products and services, and I stay connected with them. So like, your family just grows at the end of it. So if you're feeling isolated, you're looking for the next steps to level up, or even just where to get started, that would be what the coaching programs I provide. And the one-on-one is more people who are ready to like step their game up in terms of launching products, copywriting, sales, marketing, that world, and taking the next step and really monetizing and being profitable what you're doing. So coaching programs are definitely for people just getting started to figuring out the next steps to scale. And then the one-on-one would be more like profitability.
Okay. Yeah, no, I love that. And I think it's a great program. I think it's a really good idea. And I love the emphasis, like Mike was saying, on side hustle, just in that for most people, the safest route to self-employment is leveraging your day job as a way to sort of cover the bills while you're working your way out. And that was my case. Basically I had to be nudged out by a company who laid me off, and that gave me finally the wings to get out and fly. But had it not been for that layoff, I'd have never been maybe bold enough to make the step, so it was
100%
critical.
My side hustle saved my life. Not only that 5.5 years of grinding so hard under Perspective Collective in the years before that, but when I lost my job, I had built all of this. I was in a position I could take it full time. Each year I started making $0. And then each year I just doubled my income, but it was like 0 this year, 100 that year, 1,000 that year, to where like my last year of doing my side hustle in 2019, it was, I think I made like 35,000 as a side hustle. So like, it got to the point I showed I could do this. But then when the pandemic hit, because I put all this focus on serving and, I built a community all these years that I was able to serve people. I knew what type of products, I know what type of content people are looking for. I don't have to guess. I'm not out here trying to find clients during a pandemic. No, I can hear and serve people who are now at home, have all this extra time, wanting to grow their side hustle because their day job is uncertain. I'm like, yo, let me show you how to like build something for yourself that you don't have to rely on the safe route. What if your safety net gets pulled out from under you like it did for me? Well, here, we've built something now on your own terms that you don't have to wait till your 60s to retirement. Like, that is the biggest lie that our parents and grandparents were fed. Like, we don't need to be spoon fed that lie, the American dream. Like, That was great then, but now social media, you can build a business on your phone. So you have access to an entire world. There's no excuses. So I just can't get down with the mindset of life begins when you retire in your 60s. I can't get down with that. I see how that's hurt my parents and my in-laws, and they believe this, and that's just the system they grew up in, like we have a completely different opportunity. So I want to help people like break that stigma or that stereotype. Like there's not one way. The traditional route isn't the only path.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I just wanted to touch on one other thing, and it's only because you said the word out loud and it made me think of it. Here in the last couple of seconds, just as we were talking about mindset, and we've sort of been talking about this stuff throughout, that there is no direct path and that there are no shortcuts, but you used the phrase seasons, talking about these different seasons. And I know you didn't invent this idea, but I've heard it, in your podcasts and other things, this concept of people living, through different seasons. I wonder if you would sort of explain what that is or what that means to you. And I think that might actually provide a little bit of sort of, I don't know, consolation or comfort for people who aren't sure where they're at today, to sort of know that, there's still a tomorrow. You still have these other seasons that you're going to go through.
I like that. To me, it kind of revolves around like niching down as well. Like there's levels of the niching. You can pick one lane and operate it for a period of time. You can pick a style of work you want to do. To me, this is just like creating intentional projects in sprints. Think of it as chapters in a book. You're just living in a chapter right now, and you can change the course of whatever chapter you're doing. So if it's someone just getting started, I help them determine like what's your secret sauce, things you're good at, your skill sets, your values, your beliefs, your stories, your experiences, your skills, your strengths. Let's create intentional work around it. And a season could be like, here's a series of 3 for a project in one lane just to experiment within. If you like it, we can expand that season and go like a series of 10. Or if it's something you really, really like to do, like for me with the podcast, let's do a season of a minimum of 2 years and see where it's at. So to me, a season could be something short in terms of like a project or a series to start with, or it could be like, hey, this season, I am owning the lens of becoming a creative growth side hustle coach. And I'm just going to like own this lane moving forward until the next season presents itself. So it can be super short term in the micro, or it could be big picture seasons.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And well, I just love that type of framing. And I think, because one of the things so many people struggle with, and I think this relates to, people trying to get going on a side hustle, or people unsure of their day job, or trying to make a life decision. Change is scary and really hard for people. But I think about that framing things as seasons. You think about, summer, winter, spring, fall, there's dramatic shifts and dramatic change between each thing, yet here we all continue to live through it, right? Nothing serious happens, it might be a little colder, a little warmer or whatever, but it's still you at the end of the day. It's still life at the end of the day. But, you're able to better deal with these ideas of change, or the concept of change, through this framing of using seasons as a metaphor for that. So I
like it because it takes the pressure off. You don't have to figure it out overnight. It allows flexibility for things to change, because as we grow and evolve, like Pokemon, the next level happens from there too. So it takes off the pressure, lets you evolve, and then it allows you to be more intentional versus just showing up and winging and guessing it like a hobbyist would. It allows you to start taking yourself more seriously, knowing that you can shift and pivot. If something's not working, then try the next thing, try the next season of something else.
Yeah, I love it. Well, cool. So here we are kind of at the end of this thing. I wonder, Scotty, would you just sort of let people know where they can track you down if they want to engage with you personally, if they want to check out your coaching program or the podcast?
Yeah, let's just start with the free value. If you liked what you heard today and you want to go deeper and hear more mindset, motivation, and marketing things, or hear other guests come on and talk about more of the freelance side, the community building side, whatever it is, go suck up the free weekly podcast, perspectivepodcast.com, fuel for your mind and creative grind. Go and do that. And if you like that next, then, reach out to me. I'm over at Perspective Collective on Instagram. We can connect and you can talk more about coaching, but I'm not here to talk about coaching or pitch it. You already talked about it enough for me. Just go check out the podcast if you like this, and just connect with me, DM me on Instagram. I love the one-on-one, getting to know people. So
awesome. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much, Scotty. Really grateful for you to be able to, take the time for this. We had a little bit of a scheduling drama to get it worked out. So I'm grateful that it happened, and pleased to have had the time to sit and visit with you long form.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. Thanks for being flexible with my chaotic schedule. I'm to a point where I can breathe and take some time off going into June for the first time ever. So this has been great. It's really been a pleasure to get in chat and get to know you too. So hopefully we get to meet at the conference soon.
Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Great.
Yeah,
well, and cool. Well, thanks to Scotty, to Mike, and everybody who tunes in this week and every week, and we'll see you all next time.